All right. We are going to move into our last couple of keynote sessions before we wrap up today. And I'm really excited to bring these two new speakers to me. I was not familiar with them, but we're so happy that they were able to come here and join us today because their work is really, really strong. We have Heart Machine's founder and creative director, Alex Preston, and the PR community manager, Yiyi Zhang of Heart Machine. And they're going to be talking about how we use communication to build community and how it's really important for the successful launch of a game. And when we think about ones that are built by indies and small studios, how that relationship with communication is critical, and they do it so, so well. So please join me in welcoming Alex and Yiyi to the stage. Hopefully they're right here.
Okay, before I get started, there is a missing clicker, so I can't really start. Just waiting for some text support. Hi, everybody. So unfortunately, Alex couldn't be with us today. There was a snafu with TSA not allowing him to pass through with his medication because TSA. So it'll just be me delivering this presentation whenever they're ready to get started. All right, I guess my intro. I run community and PR and marketing at Heart Machine. I am also on the board of directors of GUMBO NYC, which is New York City's largest collective of indie game developers. And I'm also on the board of directors and vice president of Death by Audio Arcade, which is an indie arcade fabrication nonprofit based in New York City as well. And Alex, who could not have been here today, is the co-founder of Glitch City, which is a different indie collective based out in Los Angeles. And he is also the founder and creative director of Heart Machine. And I would love to be able to move to the next slide. Oh, okay, somebody's doing it for me, great. Could we have the bullets up here, please? Cool. All right, Glitch City. Glitch City was founded in 2013. And it was started by a group of independent game developers and artists who basically all worked out of a garage together doing art nights and realized that, hey, it's nice to make games not in isolation and to have people to work with. So they decided to start working together on a weekly basis. And from there, they grew the community into a large community and events hub that is probably the largest hub based out in Los Angeles. And that is where Heart Machine was founded. Next slide. GUMBO NYC, as I mentioned, is the city's largest collective of indie game developers and has a very similar backstory. We started in a tiny co-working space in Green Desk, which is sort of a janky version of WeWork, with a bunch of people who made games as side hobbies and did web dev and other day jobs. And now we have grown to the city's collective of developers, and we partner with local and city governments and high schools and colleges and other games industry institutions. So what these collectives have in common is they grew organically in response to community need. Like, we now consider ourselves to be sibling collectives and often try to work together to share knowledge and just be friends and hang out. So when anyone from New York goes to LA, they go to Glitch City and vice versa. Next slide. So some of the strengths of being parts of indie developer or indie collectives is strong community relationships and trust. These are your colleagues, so you're not likely to give them bad feedback and screw them over. Very fast, immediate feedback cycles. If anyone has been making any games, you'll know that it's hard to get people to sit down, play your game, and give you feedback. It's a big challenge, but it's nice to just have the space where somebody's sitting next to you and be like, hey, can you take a look at this for me? you get very diverse perspectives from people from widely different backgrounds. Some people are self-taught, some people came from academic institutions, and because of that, you just get a lot of different opinions and ways of doing things, and that ultimately makes better games. And then because everyone is scrappy, because everyone is poor, and because everyone is living in these very expensive cities to exist in, they all have to have an entrepreneurial, execution-focused mindset. So you get a lot of like fast iteration very effectively. And because we are all struggling together, there's just a lot of willingness to listen and teach each other based on the mistakes that we've made and the things that we've discovered. Next slide. So that brings us to Hyperlight Drifter. Hyperlight Drifter was an indie darling back in the day, and it was one of the most successfully funded Kickstarter game projects of all time, back in the heyday of Kickstarter, when Kickstarter wasn't just a marketing platform. And part of what made it successful was that there was a initial key philosophy of maintaining consistent, transparent communication with one's community. Like, there was a feeling of these people paid some amount of money to be invested in our Kickstarter, even if it was $15, and so we owe it to the community to give them insight to the into the process. And the way we considered what kind of information to share is the developer, Alex, thought about what do I want to know about something I invested in? What do I want to hear and see about the project? And so we took those lessons from a successful Kickstarter launch and have tried to carry it through all of our development. Heart Machine at the time was also an integral part of Glitch City because they were able to benefit from that fast feedback cycle and the community-based development. Next slide. Yeah. So here are some images of the successful Kickstarter of Hyperlight Drifter. It was funded within the first day or 48 hours or so. And you can see over there on the right, some updates. There are some monetary updates, but also some updates from Alex on his personal health, because early on it became very apparent that a community will care more about your project if you share about yourself personally. And building that empathy with your community ultimately led to a very successful release. Next slide. So on to Solar Ash. Solar Ash was our sophomore title. We were able to ride the success of Hyperlight Drifter to secure a relationship and a deal with Annapurna. And they have their publisher way of doing things. So when we started that relationship, the idea was that we were going to develop this game, they were going to support the marketing, and they were going to go through their major press outlets in order to do so. Why did we decide not to go with a community-centric marketing direction? Well, I asked Alex this a lot because I came on after the announcement of Solar Ash, and essentially, it was just a lot of work to be engaged with an audience, like throughout the course of a Kickstarter. So everyone was exhausted. There was this transition from 2D pixel to 3D, and it was just a lot of heads down focused dev time that was needed that was not compatible with the ongoing sharing that happened with the Drifter Kickstarter. But as the second half of development, as we approached the end of the development cycle of Solar Ash, the dev team felt like they were developing in a lonely cave. Because of the relationship with Annapurna, they weren't able to talk about it. They weren't able to bring it to Glitch City and dig into details for the gameplay. And eventually it felt like the inability to get that feedback was hampering things more than it was helping. So really disconnecting from those grassroots community-focused initiatives was kind of a double-edged sword. The devs could focus more on making the games and not be stressed out about also having to post content, but they also were not getting the feedback or validation that they needed. So I came on in 2021, came onto the team just in time to deal with announcing a delay. So let's go to the next slide. And we announced the delay on Twitter and on various other social platforms. And as someone who was brand new to the team, I was really nervous because this was my first big job, like public facing job, was to be like, hey, we're gonna delay this game that you've been waiting for. And actually, it was really heartening for me to see that this bad news was received with nothing but support and love from the community. And I feel like that came from the retention of goodwill and player trust and engagement from the Drifter days. So a lot of the community engagement for Solar Ash happened after release. It was well received. It was overall a successful game, and we're continuing to explore release on other platforms. But right now, the staying power of the game resides in the community. They're on our Discord, on social media. There are people still engaging with the game, like artists, writers, speedrunners, audio designers, composers. And we learned through this that even though Solar Ash was built over a 5-year duration in a vacuum without much community engagement, because we were able to have momentum from Drifter and the strength of that community, that trust carried us through and snowballed for us, and again led to a successful response to the game. So one project can feed into another if people believe in the studio and have confidence in it in general. And no matter how many updates you provide, big or small, when you have that player base already available and do not break your trust with them, they ultimately lead to a much more successful title. Next slide. So Hyperlight Breaker is our game that is coming up. We just announced it this year, and with this game, we want to bring in our community again. We want to listen again and get that feedback from people who are smarter than us, people from Glitch City and Gumbo, and also our wider network of indie colleagues like other game studios in LA, New York, and Canada, everywhere. We have, again, the benefit of the backing of an established publisher. We're working with Gearbox, and we have been able to leverage that relationship to augment what they are doing, what they do best, which is sort of more AAA focused, more press and influencer focused. And they're able to augment what we're doing, which is more grassroots, talking to individuals and like small community initiatives. And it's been overall really empowering to work together in this two-pronged way. And it's good because we're going into early access, and early access is a brand new spooky thing for us. It is uncharted territory. It is online co-op multiplayer, and a lot of things could go wrong. So having that support and having that initial momentum that came from the first two games will be critical, I think, to our success. Next. So yeah, bringing it back to that effective key philosophy behind Drifter of transparency and engagement. We were thinking about like why of all the games in early access, and the market is exhausted by all the games that are in early access, why should people care about ours? And we believe that the way we can stand out and compete in this market, especially in the online multiplayer market, is to honor that philosophy. So we're going to continue to be as open as we can about our process. Right now, there is a lower barrier of entry to making games. So more and more people, because of the resources, tutorials, documentation out there, it's much easier for people to make their own games. So there is much more interest also in the very opaque dev process with the community that plays games. So we feel like if we're going to try to engage an audience in the games, it would behoove us to give them as much insight into the dev process as possible. And secondly, if we want to continue to build a more positive, healthy ecosystem of players, it's our job to help people understand how games are made and why delays happen so that they when push comes to shove, are more engaged, more understanding, and understand why things take a little longer. So in order to do that, we are going to be doing regular content updates on Steam forums, on our dev blog, social media. We have a Q&A channel on Discord, and it's been invaluable to have localization support from Gearbox because they're able to translate all of our blog posts and content into multiple different languages and reach a global audience. Next slide. Other things we're doing are things like this, Games for Change, and other shows and expos. We want to reach out to our fans and actually see them in person and talk to them and really show that we are still part of that indie community and still part of the world of game development at large, and not just heads down making a game and pushing out a product at the end of it. So we do a fair amount of speaking now, educational initiatives and charity opportunities with schools and through other nonprofits. Next slide. And we also have achieved some level of symbiotic collaborations with other outlets and game studios. So No Clip, I don't know if y'all know the documentary makers. They are following our development of Hyperlight Breaker and tailing us for a year and sharing more behind the scenes work. We also work with larger outlets like G4 TV and smaller groups like Still Alive Studios, which is on the bottom right there, just to do community-based contests and other fun events. Next slide. And community empowerment. This is something that is really important to both myself and Alex, is giving access and opportunities to the community members who have done so much for us. They really carried us through the multiple years of development and have been loyal and with us through some of the tougher, annoying times of game development. And we want to reward them as much as possible. We want to treat them as if they are leaders, because they are. They often know a lot more about our games than some of the devs do, myself included. And they are the evangelists of our projects. So what we want to give them is as much support and gratitude as we can for the things that they do. And finally, we're bringing it back to our strategy of grassroots and big publisher marketing, compounding strategy with playtesting, with these coalitions of developers that we already are part of. So for us, the most valuable thing for us is to be able to continue to engage with this community, and other people have done this before on their stores in this genre, be able to talk to other devs openly about their honest thoughts and feelings, share knowledge, and really that's what the indie community does best for each other, is talk about and share the challenges that we've had. So overall, because of this new opened up development process that we've returned to, it's been incredibly valuable to be able to get those reference points. And that's it.